Thanks a lot, Valerie. I really appreciate it. So, a few things from my side before we get started. Yeah, some of you might wonder why is something called the Global Facility for Disaster Reduction and Recovery involved in this business of nature-based solutions, or whatever name you all come up with at the end of the session to address one of Valerie's questions. The simple question is that we're trying to focus on any way we can think of to address climate and disaster risk. And we have learned, and Valerie talked about some of the numbers for the portfolio of the bank, that sometimes nature and working with nature and integrating nature and the solutions that we are suggesting to our clients simply is the most efficient solution. It sometimes is the cheapest, the most durable, and the most effective from a risk management point of view. So that's why an outfit like ours is involved. At the same 10 years that Valerie was mentioning the $8 billion portfolio number, our grant facility have allocated about 75 million in bank executed trust funds. That's resources that teams like yours and many of you connected and other teams in the bank have been using to apply and bring in technical expertise to help the bank move the much bigger money to create the impact that hopefully we're becoming better at measuring. But in addition, in the last few years, we have, together with environment and water, we have tried to learn how can we, in addition to the grant resources, in addition to the financing resources from IPID and IDA, how can we bring in knowledge collectively? And collectively here is important because the top in the engagement, and someone who has a disaster risk management title in the bank, on average, has an engineering bias. Engineers, traditionally don't learn in school how to do anything that's not great. It's not simple to solve risk management questions using methods that most of the people who need to solve them were not taught in school. So bringing in knowledge coming from environmental backgrounds, coming from other backgrounds is key to figure out how can we enable our clients to take on solutions that they may not on their own be comfortable doing. We have an exciting session today. We'll hear a brief presentation from Brendan and Boris. That will be followed by Dinara from the Environment Group, who I believe is connecting from Congo, who will talk a bit about a GEF-funded program that's linked to this overall engagement. We will then have an intervention that I think is videotaped from one of our clients in DRC. And then finally, and maybe most importantly, we're going to hear a few Ignite presentations from some project teams that have engaged some of this type of solutions as part of the puzzle that they're working on. So hopefully a lot of portfolio level impact type of information, practical information. And then it was set up as those of you who are here in DC afterwards, we can grab lunch and chit chat and you can connect with each other, the team, and ask follow-up questions. I know most of you are eating in the room already, so we may have an opportunity to do a bit more of a Q&A in case there's any questions coming from the online crowd that cannot benefit from the lunch that we have provided. I do finally want to say one more thing on the partnership side. It's not easy, and any of you who've been around here for a little bit, work across our various boxes and silos really is not easy. You know, all the top boxes will tell us all that that's what we should do, but in practice, it's not quite that simple. It's hard to understand each other, it's hard to figure out what works and what doesn't work on the incentive structure and all of that, and it happens all the time. I tell my team at a global level frequently that we have a quite privileged position. We're peddling and channeling best available knowledge. And the opportunities there are infinite. And therefore, we have an opportunity to create bridges and connect with the water practice, the environment practice, with some of the other practices who hopefully become the beneficiary, intermediaries to create impact on the ground. And I hope we can continue to keep that going. Part of why this portfolio has grown, as Valerie was saying, really is because the support we can offer, and the support I believe we can offer as a cross-sectoral team. So I really appreciate that we have the Environment Group and the Water Group here today, despite me speaking from my position as part of the urban family. And I look forward to continue to work with you on this. So over to Brent.
Thanks, Niels. Thanks, Valerie. Can anyone online still hear us? Can I help here? Speak here? Yeah, we did. No matter how long you prepare this and how many times you meet with IT, 45 minutes before, it's as good as you want it to go. But thanks for the opening words and thanks all for joining us. We are really excited about this section. We always say this about a BBL. And we've launched the Nature-Based Solutions Community of Practice back in 2016. So many of you will have seen us talk about these things in this kind of setting. But today we really have a number of our project beneficiaries, both on the client side and on some TTLs, to tell us about the different ways of engaging nature-based solutions in their operations. So I want to not take too much time on the global level and hear as much as possible from the ground, but we do want to do a bit of an introduction and show you some of the global tools available to you. Just maybe to start, Valerie already I think introduced it greatly, but why do we do nature-based solutions? This is actually a picture of where I'm currently living with the bank, following my bank's house in Panama City. And this is 10 minutes from my house, where you enter this pristine piece of rainforest, and you get in there, you feel the temperature lower, you hear all the animals, you see people recreating, people doing picnics, people go running like me, even though it's 30 degrees and 100% humidity, so you quickly regret it, but it's still a very nice escape from the bustling city. But we know that most of our cities' landscapes are not evolving naturally that way and keeping those assets in our cities. So most of our landscapes are quickly degrading. We are losing forests to agriculture, to infrastructure, to cities like here in Rio de Janeiro. We still see the last remaining trees in that urban landscape. And that is a global process, and it's normal, of course. We need those infrastructure, we need buildings, we need roads, and if we don't watch out, those will overtake everything else in your landscape. Now, this leads to several climate resilience related challenges that our clients are facing, which is sort of why we're here. Right? We see increasing risk of flooding in areas where natural buffers, the green space that used to take up rainwater, the river meandering rivers are occupied by buildings. We see coastlines where storms are hitting much harder. The protected wetlands, beaches, dunes are often no longer there where they used to be. Our communities and cities don't have green space for recreating. Kids don't have a place to play. Where you have your markets, especially with an increasing risk of heat waves, where cities without trees are often much more hot than those with them. And we don't actually go far to see this. This is Washington, D.C., the government. In August 2018, they took a very detailed temperature measurement at the same time, at 3 p.m. on this hot day, and they found that Rugby Park, where I just went running this morning, is my favorite place in DC. It was 29.7 degrees under trees, there's shade, there's water. It's still a nice warm day, but just a few kilometers over, a few blocks over, you see in that urban neighborhood the temperature is 39 degrees. So this is the difference between a nice warm day and what's potentially lethal temperature for vulnerable people. So why we do nature-based solutions is both to use them as tools to reduce risk, flood risk, heat risk, landslide risk, but also bring out these other benefits for biodiversity, for carbon sequestration, for food production, for livelihoods, job creation, and that's really the crux. As said, this is not a new thing. Different labels have been put on it. I think we have a new movement now where we're thinking about this more structurally and doing it more intentionally. But the bank has been investing in these solutions for a long time. From the urban park in Mozambique that was mentioned, where the bank financed one of the largest urban parks in Africa, specifically designed to fight flooding, but also to help support communities. Coast settings where we restore coral reefs, mangroves, wetlands, beaches, and dune systems for climate protection, but also to support fisheries, to support livelihoods. Wetlands, like here in Colombo, Sri Lanka, mountainous areas with a lot more interest these days, also from the transport sector, like here in India, or reforesting landslide-prone areas to protect transport infrastructure. So if you look at the numbers, those were the numbers mentioned earlier. We have a portfolio review that we try to keep updated. So I think it's important that we know what's going on. There's a printed version of the last one at the door. We see that between 2012 and 2022, we see about 170 projects that are structurally and quite significantly including nature-based solutions in their interventions. That's $7.6 billion. And interestingly, if you look at all the result frameworks of those projects together are rehabilitating or restoring 2.3 million hectares of ecosystems. It's not insignificant. and then protecting 34,000 kilometers of coastlines and riverbanks to climate risk. And those are just some of the indicators that you can learn from. When we look at the regional breakdown, we see a third approximately implemented by Pearl, another third by EMP. We assess this more for water. We have been a strong partner in many projects in the transport and agriculture. We also highly engaged in implementing this. Africa is taking a large share currently of investments, especially with more IDA financing being available here. We have several African examples that we'll hear from in the speeches today, followed by EAP, South Asia, and Now, IEG did a review on the relevant climate work in the bank from 2012 to 2020, or 2010 to 2020. And they focused quite significantly on NBS, did a specific analysis looking at the entire bank's portfolio. They found indeed NBS can be an effective tool for disaster management, contribute to mitigation and adaptation. They found, like we are also finding, that there's still a lot of potential for growth. They concluded that NBS is constrained by lack of evidence still in some places, and lack of client and staff's familiarity with these approaches of how to do it, when to do it, and how to actually design this. And of course, the reason why I'm very proud to put this on the slide is that they concluded that staff were less exposed to our program or programs such as our program and nature-based solutions, maybe less familiar and maybe less able to benefit from the technical support needed to make this happen. So we're grateful for that introduction, because that's exactly why we designed this program. It's really designed to increase the uptake of NBS across the bank's portfolio. We work across these three pillars to take away gaps on knowledge, make sure we have all the knowledge tools available without doing an overly large amount of guidance notes, making sure our operational teams have what they need in terms of technical support, in terms of experts, and operational assistance from feasibility studies all the way to implementation, operations, maintenance, and then we bring in the right partnerships inside and out. So I won't go into too much detail on all the results. So Board will speak a bit about the tools, but just to highlight that we, in the last 2 years, supported about 60 projects with NBS identification and implementation. Those projects those projects reached about 12 million beneficiaries on their NBS components. They supported 380,000 hectares of nature with resilience benefits in terms of restoration and rehabilitation. We have enabled access to over 550 guidance notes, or a huge organized database of all the guidance that you might want. If you're ever tired and you're on a Sunday afternoon, you want to read an NBS report, you don't hesitate to reach out. Plus hundreds of consultants in a database, different technical partnerships, and over 53,000 downloads of the knowledge products. So we see that there is a lot of demand, increasing demand, which I think is a good thing, and we see that reflected in the portfolio. And Boris will speak a bit more about the actual services and types of support we see from the program.
Yeah, thank you, Brendan. I think we're gonna try to stay a bit here because I think the sound is a bit better.
There's another screen over there. I don't know.
Yeah, over here. Yeah, I had some talking points, but I'm gonna freestyle. So with partners, we are working on targeted knowledge production where we feel this is necessary for our engagement with teams. Actually, we have a few of them in the back, a hard copy, if you want to take them after this event. I'm just mentioning these very quickly. So there's a bunch of other ones, but the catalog of nature-based solutions for urban resilience is quite used by both within the World Bank and outside the World Bank by people who want to sort of start a conversation about nature-based solutions, right? So you have an area where you might consider some investments, and like what are some of the types that you can actually start looking at, and how do they fit the context of your project? So it's really sort of a good way to narrow down in the beginning and to kind of have a sort of a start thinking about what type of NBS should it look like. The guideline on assessing benefits and cost offers a comprehensive framework for doing the benefits and the cost assessment. Valerie mentioned is very important across your project cycle. So like how much detail you need when, because it can be quite difficult in some cases to do this well. And of course, we know that NBS are solutions that can be very powerful in terms of inclusion. because they bring a lot of jobs. They can sometimes create like sort of communal spaces where people can interact, etc. So there's a lot of potential there as well. I'm not going to go too much in detail. What Brendan mentioned, the 60 engagements that we have supported from some of these projects you see here on the slide. You will hear more later, actually, in the Ignite presentations. Just to say that it's like in the portfolio, our engagement are also more or less distributed across the GPs in the same way. So it's like more about 40% GPearl, 30% EMB, and then the rest by water GP and transport, etc. So what do we actually do? I think this is an important slide to take a little bit of time. So I try to put our activities in a few buckets. So the first category, I would say, just-in-time technical support, which is basically when TTLs, they come to us and they just ask, okay, hey, I have this project, the client is talking about NBS, or maybe the TTL themselves, they're thinking about NBS, how can we get started? So often we start with like a sort of a brainstorm session, like how can you maybe get some grant funding to do some studies, etc. So it's really sort of the startup phase. Once there has been a sort of a conversation started on nature-based solutions, we have a few in-house analytics, like quick analytics that are cheap and replicable that we offer to teams. So this NBS opportunity scan, I will talk a little bit more about it later, but it's something that we designed to be able to do to bring some first results in like 4 to 6 weeks to have a first idea of like what your investment could look like. But further down the line in the project, we have like about 20 STCs that we work with that are experts on all different kinds of nature-based solutions aspects, and they help with like the design and the procurement and the supervision of technical studies that look at pre-feasibility level, what different type of investments, and then later on, often these same experts stay involved during implementation to work on capacity building, reviewing designs, thinking about procurement questions, etc. And finally, we'll hear from Sarah later, but we also supported a handful of CCDRs with like deep dives on investment needs for NBS for adaptation. So yeah, a few words on the NBS opportunity scan. So this is really, this really came from a demand. So we from that support that we were providing to teams, we often got the question, okay, we want to do something, we want to do some analytics, but if we hire a firm and we're like 1 year, further, and like then we have some first results. So what can we do? We really started sort of brainstorming. Okay, what can we do within like, a couple weeks, a couple months to get some first results using global available data, so without any dependence on local data collection, and building on sort of more and more increasingly available remote sensing and open geospatial data sets. And we came up with this methodology. We have about 8 kind of scientists as STCs who are really been working on this, and we came up with this sophisticated methodology that basically looks at, okay, where are the hazards and the climate risks in your area? What are sort of, you can see on this map, it's a bit small, but like what is the current status of nature in your city, and like where are opportunities to create new things, and link that to specific types of interventions like bioretention areas or urban agriculture or mangroves or forests. And then as a third step, how do these, or like in which parts of the city or your coastal landscape do these interventions actually have a positive impact on the resilience challenges that you identified in the first step? So this whole process we've been able to do in about 4 to 6 weeks. We've applied it now in about 45 cities and about 5 or 6 coastal landscapes, and we have a pipeline for this year to do it in about 5 other coastal areas. Next one, please. We'll hear more about the NBS opportunity scan from some of the presentations. This is one of the projects that I want to mention it because of the time difference, they cannot, unfortunately, not be here. But this is actually an ENV project in Indonesia. Maybe you've heard of it. It's the Mangroves for Coastal Resilience project. There's a picture with the president who visited it recently. It's a project that has gotten quite a lot of attention, and we've been working with them over quite a long time. And one of the things that we did is a national assessment of the benefits of large mangrove conservation and restoration. And what we heard back as feedback from the team is that it really helped them to sort of talk to the government about the difference between restoration and conservation. Because, of course, the government, wants to, brick and mortar stuff and do a lot of restoration, but then they actually show, okay, but, to some extent, conservation can also bring a lot of those resilience benefits. So we also focus on, protecting mangroves in areas where they currently protect the coastline. Maybe it will be more cost effective than actually start planting everywhere. So that was, I think, a very important piece of feedback. Just quickly to summarize, I guess Niels already mentioned quite a lot of this. So we of course try to work as much as we can with all the different groups in the bank, the environment colleagues, INARA that we will hear from later, and of course also other sister programs in GFDRR. Stop there.
Okay, thanks a lot, Boris and Brendan. Now we're going to hear from Dinara Akhmetova, who is a natural resource management specialist with the NB and the task team leader of the NBS Invest, which is an initiative with GEF funds that supports technical assistance on nature-based solutions in least developed countries. And she'll introduce this still relatively new program, which relates to the overall program that we're talking about here. Dinara is connected. I see you on the screen. Yes, Dinara, over to you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Good morning, good evening. So I'm connecting from the country, actually from the field. And if my connection drops, we have Jose Rebane who will support me. And hopefully that connection will stay in place. So name of our projects is NBS Invest. This is an abbreviation that we would like you to remember us. But we were basically designed to accelerate uptake of the nature-based solutions in least developed countries. Next slide, please. So our project is focused on least developed countries, as I mentioned before. There are 46 of them. It's based on the UN on the classification. The risk associated with global decline in nature negatively impact economies already affecting the poorest countries most. And this cohort of countries is disproportionately impacted by climate change. The challenges to climate resilience in these countries are multiplied by high poverty, limited trade, limited capacity or lack of this, weak policy framework, and fragility. NBS, in turn, as you already heard, a cost-effective approach to climate change and can simultaneously address multiple development challenges and align climate change, biodiversity, and green recovery agenda by providing an ecological approach to protecting people, optimizing infrastructure, and safeguarding the natural environment. There are multiple other benefits associated with the adoption of nature-based solutions. One of them that I really like is the fact how many jobs the nature-based solutions might provide in this country. Next slide, please. Yeah. So as you know what, I will turn off my video. Sorry about this. This project is 10 million project funded by the Least Developed Countries Fund, which is the adaptation fund of the Global Environment Facility. We are to be implemented from July 23 to June 2027. The goal, objective of our project is to increase the uptake of nature-based solutions into World Bank project investment to address climate adaptation challenges and provide benefits for nature. Specifically, our focus is on IDA 20 agenda. It happened that IDA 20, one of the pillars of IDA 20 agenda is nature-based solutions. And we promised to the donors that we will bring 20 or more of the new IDA projects in LDCs, which will incorporate nature-based investments by 2027. And other not least important goal or our promise to donors was that we will facilitate blended IDA and LDCF co-financing, so I'll just revert back a little bit. LDCF, Least Developed Countries Fund, provided $20 million to each least developed countries for a 4-year period, which is replenishment of the GF from year 22 to 26 for resilience in adaptation. So our goal is to provide as many blended projects or blended opportunities or additional financing to existing or new IDA operations in least developed countries. Next slide, please. Our project includes 3 pillars, and 2 key pillars are pillar 1 is to build a business case for nature-based investments. This pillar includes development of the tools and analytics for nature-based solutions in least developed countries in the IDA operations or in the context of the applicable to in the context of IDA operations. Expanding financial opportunities for NBS. Here we're trying to find ways of matching funding, try to identify new funding opportunities for projects specifically for NBS, and incorporates NBS upstream work. So that includes, we're saying World strategies, but basically our approach is to work jointly with CCDR teams in order to bring in the NBS focus and landscape scanning into these reports. Pillar 2, incorporating NBS and country investments. Through this pillar, will provide packages of up to $200,000 of technical assistance for NBS investments and for technical assistance and capacity building. And in addition to that, development of the capacity building program for NBS design and implementation. And our last slide, actually, this last slide, thank you so much for switching to this one. This slide provides some summary of the progress and actually flavor of what we do, the flavor of our work and our support that we provide to the teams. So we just started in July, but because of our intensive work during preparation, our joint work with GP and NBS, we already contributed to incorporating NBS into several projects and have strong pipeline of teams interested in working with us. And here are some examples of this work. With a strong support from GF Adaptation Fund from LDCF, we actually successfully contributed to mobilize blended funding of $20 million to Burundi Sustainable Resilient Collines, which is $100 million IDA project. This project will go forward as blended operation. 26 million in Solomon Islands, where the LDCF funding of 20 million was topped up by the 6 million GF star allocation, 5 million LDCF in Zambia, and $10 million LDCF commitment in Bangladesh to the new IDA project under preparation. This project actually doesn't even have P number yet, but this project will be focused on resilient environment in Sunderbans region. We are also exploring additional financing and blended opportunities in other countries. There are a few countries that I'm not naming here, but hopefully by the end of this fiscal year, we'll have a few more countries with LDCF funding. On demand, we have several teams that we're already providing support. Some striking examples or really nice examples of this work is Senegal Food System Resilience Program, which is a $400 million project. With our support, this project will include 92 million component focusing on nature-based solutions and climate-smart agriculture. Ethiopia Lowland Livelihood Resilience Phase 2 project. This is either 400 million operation, but the Phase 2 is to 200 million. they received we just approved the technical assistance capacity building package with the design of NBS is a key investment in natural rangelands. Burundi climate resilience project. This team received a technical assistance package with the focus on NBS. This team will also contribute work with the focus on women groups, on women cooperatives working with VOCAN, which is we also see this as really high potential in engaging with on a gender impact or gender issues, and Cambodia integrated sustainable land management project. Through Pillar 1, we're working to complement existing nature-based solution tools and NBS. So we bring in agriculture, natural resource management tools, NBS financing, and agriculture and biodiversity analytical work. Our support through CCDR to CCDR teams. This fiscal year we started with support to Togo, Tanzania, Uganda, Sierra Leone, and Benin. We're planning to develop capacity building program jointly with GPNBS that will offer modules which can be tailored to the needs and reality of LDCs and investment projects. So it will be focused both on the project teams and on the PIUs. And also we're working on more general trainings for broader government audiences to increase interest and uptake of the nature-based solutions. So this is it. I'm proud to say that our team is large. I can't name everyone, but our co-TTLs are Rusa Tomayor and April Connolly. They're probably in the room. Jose Rubin, he's a team member since the preparation. GPNBS, we work across GPs. We collaborate closely with water GP, agriculture. Hopefully we'll expand our work to other GPs as well. And one of the strongest supporters of our team, especially in blending part, is WOBENTF Coordination Unit, Angela Armstrong. I really appreciate your support. That's it for me. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Last global level presentation. We have now a videotaped testimonial sort of thing from Lucy Akayika. Lucy is an urban development and governance specialist with the DRC Ministry of Public Works, and we will hear a recording of her experience working with the nature-based solution development programs related to the Kananga Emergency Urban Resilience Project.
La Banque mondiale, à travers GFDRR, a appuyé une étude intitulée Nature-Based Solution for Climate, Unlocking the Full Potential for Low Carbon Emissions and Urban Resilience in the City of Kinshasa, à travers le financement Climate Gap Fund. Cette étude a reçu l'appui substantiel de GPNBS pour améliorer l'algorithme scan de toute la ville de Kinshasa, produit par le consultant. Celui-ci s'est servi de cet algorithme existant qui a été produit par GPNBS pour l'adapter au contexte de Kinshasa en l'améliorant suivant les bases de données locales. L'étude a produit également une cartographie pertinente grâce à un algorithme développé par GPNBS et adapté au contexte. Et l'étude a sélectionné les solutions basées sur la nature les plus adaptées qui peuvent être utilisées et les a priorisées suivant les impacts combinés en termes de réduction des risques, séquestration carbone et coûts-bénéfices socio-économiques. Ces différents résultats ont été très importants dans la mesure où ils ont guidé les solutions techniques apportées au projet Kinelenda, projet de développement multisectoriel et de résilience de Kinshasa, financé par la Banque mondiale, dans sa phase opérationnelle de mise en œuvre à Kimweza. Kimweza est un quartier du sud de la ville de Kinshasa pour lequel des érosions se sont développées à cause de l'urbanisation galopante et du fait du relief. C'est un quartier qui est très vallonné et plusieurs têtes d'érosion se sont développées dans ce quartier. Le projet a donc utilisé le scan développé par GPNBS pour analyser les opportunités des solutions basées sur la nature dans ce quartier, sur demande du gouvernement de la République. Ainsi, la GFDRR nous a aidés à la définition des investissements de solutions basées sur la nature plus spécifiques sur ce site érosif de Kimweza, dont les solutions vont être mises en œuvre avec l'Université Loyola du Congo. Le GFDRR nous a également aidés à mettre en place une meilleure communication avec les bénéficiaires et une assistance technique à la révision de tous les livrables que le consultant a produits, mais aussi à la finalisation des solutions qui vont être appliquées dans le site de Kimweza. Grâce à cette étude, nous avons pu obtenir un atlas des espèces végétales qui nous ont permis de découvrir des spécialités locales qui vont être utilisées dans le site érosif de Kimweza, qui ne sont pas toujours les mêmes utilisées auparavant. Donc, l'option a été prise d'utiliser des arbres fruitiers et d'autres plantations, d'autres plants et arbustes sur ces différents sites pour permettre à la régénération du sol et lutter contre les sites érosés. Merci beaucoup pour votre attention.
Excellent. Then we got 4 more project level presentations, each of them meant to be for 5 minutes. We will hear about a project in West Africa, another one in Argentina, one in the Caribbean, and one in Chad. I would like to invite Anne sitting right there. Anne is a senior specialist with urban practice, and she will talk about one of the projects in West Africa, where she's co-TTLing a secondary cities urban mobility development project. I'm not sure, is Ibrahim joining you? Or you
No, I can't, unfortunately, but
all right.
in the project.
No problem at all. He's from the transport practice, Ibrahim, but I'm not going to introduce him since he is unable to join, unfortunately. We've got Anne.
No, we can introduce Ibrahim. It's the secondary cities project. So it's a co-led urban and sport project. Together with Anaba, we are 3 of this project. I have been maybe before speaking about Burkina Faso. Just the first time I've been working on the NBS project was after a mission in Côte d'Ivoire, in another city project in the north of Côte d'Ivoire. We had very interesting discussions with the mayors there about greening. So we don't speak about nature-based solution in Côte d'Ivoire. We speak about greening the city, but they had a lot of requests about trying to find a way to plant trees, to have shade for the children in the schools, or for students going to universities, and so that was very interesting. And that's the first time I came to Sibor, asking what can we do at a large scale, at the scale of the city actually, to find solutions to green the cities, for nature-based solutions. And then therefore, when we started preparing this project in Burkina Faso, it's another secondary city project, we had in mind the idea of having the support of Boris and team on nature-based solutions. So maybe you can speak a bit of the project. So I'm not going to go into detail, but Burkina Faso and 2 of the 3 cities we work with, Kaya and Waikuya, are in the north of the country. So FCV area, a lot of violent events in terms of climate, increasing droughts, floods, and water scarcity, and all that in a context where the 2 cities, at least, Kaya and Waikuya, are welcoming a lot of IDPs, and their population more than doubled in the last 2 years, 5 years. So which increased the pressure on services and on land, and etc. So the main components of the project, there's 3 main components. So remember, it's a transport and urban collect project. So there's a lot of work on urban mobility with urban road rehabilitation and upgrading, road safety improvement, together with the development of urban infrastructure and servicing along the road rehabilitated using a spatial approach. That's actually point, and there's also construction of stormwater drainage network and green and public spaces rehabilitation or improvement. And there's also a component on capacity building for the municipalities and the government on urban management and mobility planning. So next slide. So well, we've seen that in another slide of Boris, but what's interesting here is that it's very visual. I mean, when we discussed that with the client, we had very interesting discussion. They could see right away in their city what benefits of producing flooding, heat, etc. And I think that's very useful. So our goal was really to me it was also a way to enhance the spatial approach, because when you see that, you can see where exactly you can have benefits from the NBS solution. We are the point on the infrastructure and green and public spaces investment are important ones, especially for social cohesion, especially because there has been a lot of population pressure on the city. So you need to preserve some space for people to meet together, etc. And of course drainage, whose infrastructure at the beginning were very gray, we found. So we are trying to see the possibility of incorporating green infrastructure. And as Boris said, it's quick, because my experience as CTM is that we get to see Boris when we concluded, we said okay, we gave a go, and then 6 weeks after we had the scans themselves, the opportunity scans, which is very good because we were actually writing the pad and we could use that in the pad. There's nice pictures in the pad. So, and the next slide, please. And this map, when we show the city of Bobo-Dioulasso, for them it's very important to have open green space, but also green corridors. And they see right away what they can do, even if it's not digital yet, they can see the opportunity. So that was very useful. What was very useful as well was the fact that the team could help us cost the investments. So it's interesting in the discussion with the client. It was also very interesting in our investment portfolio presented in the past, and also in our discussion with the CCB team, because we could costs and then discuss with them and get a nice benefit of 70%, not only thanks to the nature-based solution, but also it will help. And the next steps for that is we're going to do NBS system diagnosis with pre-feasibility studies in the 3 cities. We would like to start very quickly operational support to integrate the NBS solution in the design of the drainage work, because this is actually being developed now. So we want to be sure that we give space to the green solutions, and of course capacity building at city and government level. But what I can say, we had Laura presenting the NBS solution to the whole team of clients, the cities, the mobility team, the government, and they were very interested. We could see from the beginning the interest. So it's because it's visible also, and it's about our lives, the life of the people when they live in a city. So it has been very useful, and thanks to the team for the continuous support for this project. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is Catalina, who's joining us from Buenos Aires, I think. Certainly, she's a senior water supply and sanitation specialist based in Buenos Aires, and she's the co-CTL of the Climate Resilient Infrastructure for Urban Flood Risk Management Project, and will share some experience working with the service of the program in the context of her work in Buenos Aires. Over to you.
Thank you. Do you hear me well?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, first, thanks for inviting me. I'm going to try to summarize the more than 30-year relationship between the bank and Argentina in a 5-minute talk. So I hope I'm good enough. Well, basically, flooding in Argentina is one of the most recurrent climate hazards and produces severe negative effects in the economy and the well-being of the country, especially on the most vulnerable, and those who live in the cities are hit harder. So there was a started of a relationship between the bank and Argentina on these issues in the 90s, when there was a big El Nino flooding. And actually it was interesting to see how the project names started to change. So they started to say like the El Nino rehabilitation project, and slowly shifted towards a more integrated planning and flood mitigation kind of project. So it shifted to urban drainage was the next generation of projects, and then flood risk management was this following one. And now we have a brand new project called climate resilient infrastructure. So it was interesting to see that about 5 years ago or later, a lot of attention started to grow on a combination of nature-based solutions with the gray infrastructure we have been usually using for flood risk management. So the idea was to actually balance more, including gray and green investments, trying to green the cities and reaching additional benefits beyond flood risk management, especially the heat temperature effect. So we did support a nature-based solution in Buenos Aires. So the first picture you see in the presentation is from the Buenos Aires intervention. And it was only possible due to a combination of many things. First, that we have huge investments in green infrastructure, so we could put some of the green infrastructure investment together in the same contract. But also it was because of the city's own interest on resilience and how the city started developing strategies for coping with climate change impacts, and also because they started to become part of the 100 Resilient Cities networks, for example. So they have been influencing from other cities in a positive way. Next slide. So in late 2022, the government of Argentina approached the bank again to continue working on flood risk management in the cities specifically. And a new project was recently approved in June this year. It was designed as a multi-phase programmatic approach. So since the story was long, we thought, okay, let's continue because this is a long-term engagement. And Argentina is so big and so different that we need to address different flood risk from different perspectives and in different geographical areas. So the first phase is a $200 million loan that will focus on the northern provinces. Most of them are within the Paraná River Basin. Next slide. So this current project aims to increase the number of people with reduced flood risk and benefit from improved integrated urban flood risk management in Argentina. It has an entire subcomponent focused on innovative solutions where we hope this will be filled with nature-based solutions. Next slide. But not surprisingly, most of the pre-identified measures for funding did not have or did not present nature-based solutions. So they were not incorporated by the municipalities who presented. So we did reach out to a global program on nature-based solutions. Next. And with their support, we made use of nature-based solutions opportunity scan tool to actually start identifying the opportunities that are in 4 of the municipalities and to assess its relevance and interest with local and regional governments. The next slide, please. So the tool was used in the 4 interested municipalities in the northern Argentina, and it was through its methodology that several opportunities were identified and discussed with local experts. The initial discussions were taken at a technical level on the potential to bring these recommendations into reality. Interestingly, the results are well, first we knew there was kind of an understanding from the technical perspective, but not so much on the easiness of the decision-making makers to actually choose these solutions over the great traditional measures. And this brings us a lot of information to us, in particularly on the need for overcome some of the challenges that are better education, more robust community engagements, which is super important in Argentina, and there are some key legal reforms that are needed in order to bring these solutions available to implement. So I think it was quicker than 5 minutes. So if you, next slide. If you have any more detailed question, you can just in the lunch part of it, you can ask, or through an email.
Thank you, Catalina. You spent that time. I barely managed to chew up my lunch. I'm eating here. And by the way, if you have, there's a fantastic, wonderful internet story that's still up there somewhere from some of the work Catalina and others have been doing in Buenos Aires on flood risk that is fascinating to window into World Bank operations that you can get through the internet. Next up, Sarah Turner in person. I don't think I've met you, so I don't know who am I looking at. There you are. Hi, Sarah. Sarah's an economist with the World Bank Sustainable Development Group, focusing on Latin America and the Caribbean, and she will discuss the support that the program has offered her and the engagement in the Eastern Caribbean related to the CCDR. Sarah?
All right, I'll try to get in under 5 minutes too. So I'm super excited to talk a little bit about something a little bit different. So a lot of what we've seen already is operationally focused. This was some support that the GP NBS team gave to us for the country climate development reports for the Eastern Caribbean region. Next slide. So the CCDRs, or country climate development reports, for those who do not know or have not run across them somehow, are really intended to capture the interplay between country development goals and climate change. And they're developed through an active engagement with government, civil society, academia, and they all contain sort of a pretty significant piece of analytic work, or several pieces of analytic work. Each CCDR is unique. And so for the Eastern Caribbean CCDR, which is looking at 4 countries who are IDA loan recipients in the Caribbean, Dominica, Grenada, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines. The core focus is really on resilient states. That's the heart of this particular CCDR. And in order to do this, we did a lot of work in various pieces, looking at multiple hazards, multiple sources of risk, investment needs to ensure that we have service provision in the event of a disaster, and not just the direct benefits of those types of investments, but also the co-benefits of them. Coastal hazards, because these are all small island developing states, are obviously a core concern there. Next slide. So with the NBS team, we looked at the potential for 3 different types of interventions to address future hazard for coastal flooding, specifically coral reef restoration, mangroves, and beach nourishment. And so this is an example of one of the 4 outputs we got from this work. For St. Lucia, for each of these interventions, and what basically the scan did for each of these countries was look at kind of what's the spatial distribution of the opportunities here, what are the range of costs and benefits that we observe, and then how are they distributed, right? So we can start to see where might there be opportunities to go into a little bit more depth and think about what might actually work. Next slide. There's really 2 key pieces that I think, 2 key things that I think are really important about this work and the way it was applied here. First is that because we're using kind of the opportunity scan framework, or they were using the opportunity scan framework, we get spatially explicit assessments of costs and benefits, right? Cool. Okay. This got exciting.
Trying to see how many people listening to the presentation.
Keeping with the example of St. Lucia, we can look at a place like Esperance Harbor, and this was done, that work that was done after the work that they provided for. And we can say, okay, where might macros be appropriate, and what's the actual breakdown of these benefit costs, and for not just flood protection, but also kind of the fisheries and resource use benefits and the carbon sequestration benefits that come out of this, which is really, really crucial. And so what we see is that they're pretty large, which is great. Next slide. The other really big and important thing that I really valued about this particular collaboration was that we were able to look at future risk and impact of nature-based solutions under different climate and development scenarios. So not just looking at, okay, what is the risk level now and how might NBS be valuable, but what might it look like in the future due to both changes in socioeconomic development patterns and changes in the actual physical distribution of risk and the physical changes in the hazard frequency or intensity, right? And then we can say, okay, well, in that context, what is the benefit and how do these cost benefits change, and how much of this future risk might be defrayed by investments in NBS now, right? And that's a little bit a more forward-looking framing for this piece of work. I think the scenarios we developed show really clearly the intersection of development challenges and climate change and the ways that NBS are valuable for addressing these challenges. We highlight this work both in chapter 3 of the CCDR, which is kind of a sectoral analysis piece where we go deep, but we also got to use the investment cost estimates that were produced in the macroeconomic modeling that we do for the CCDRs, which is great because that helps us tell the broader story and the development story in this context. And the other really kind of huge crucial piece of this is that it was responsive to client interest. We had people mention, hey, what are the benefits and costs of these NBSs in this space? And it filled an analytic gap that some of the other CCDRs have faced in terms of thinking about how do we cost and benefit for adaptation needs. So that's where I am.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Last but not least of these country project examples, we'll hear, I'll invite Laurent Courrier, who I believe is right there. I'll ask Laurent to speak about the Central African Republic and not actually Chad, as I mentioned just before, because I believe that's where he's actually working and therefore more comfortable talking about. He does work in a number of city settings. We will hear, I think, about the Inclusive and Resilient Cities project.
All right, thank you, Nils. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So we can go to next. So I'm going to talk about a project in preparation. It's called an Inclusive Cities project in Central Africa, known as PROVIR. So that's the $70 million IPF under preparation for the pipeline for next fiscal year. The goal of the project is to improve access to climate resilience infrastructure, basic services and socioeconomic opportunities, and also enhance institutional capacity in selected cities. So the 4 cities included in the project are Bangui, that's the capital city, 1.4 million inhabitants, and 3 secondary cities, Berbera, Bambari, and Pirao. So this focus on cities beyond my own URL is linked to the context. Ghana is a FCD country. There has been violent conflict in 2013, 2014 that have led to massive internal displacement and a lot of rural to urban migration. And cities in Central African Republic have been seen increasingly as safe havens for population seeking refuge. So that's why the CMU and the government of Central Africa are really wanting to focus on cities and invest. At the same time, we know that cities are still quite vulnerable, and beyond issues of extreme heat and high winds in the west. I think the 2 main challenges in terms of DRM and climate are linked to urban flooding and soil erosion. So I think while we prepare that operation, we got in touch with the NBS pretty early, actually at the concept note stage, to hold initial discussion and try to assess the suitability of NBS in order to support the PDO. That quickly led to the preparation of a scan as well. So some colleagues addressed this, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I just want to say that we tailored the scan to the needs of the operation. So that's why we included the 4 cities. We also selected key categories from the NBS parameters, and we also adjusted the primary and secondary benefit to the FCV and car specific context to improve the output of the scan. So the main output was the map, displaying the NBS opportunities across the 4 cities. The one thing I'd like to emphasize that may be also useful for other colleagues is that we were also interested in finding cluster NBS opportunities, because in LDCs and FCV countries, you face so much needs in terms of urban infrastructure and local services that sometimes it becomes complicated to know where to start. And for us, this has been very useful because it gave us a way to propose to the government to target specific neighborhood within Bangui using the result of the scan. And we sort of like leverage those clusters as I wrote here, like spatial entry point to then conduct participatory workshop and not only identify NBS, but also identify local neighborhood investments. Next. So as an example, Berberati, so that's the city that's on the west of the country, close to the border with Cameroon. So the NBS identified important cluster in the city center, and I went to Berberati last September, and the one thing that is important to mention that I did not hear today is that the scan is pretty accurate. It does work. So that's super good. Yes. And it's good for not just because it works very well, but it's very important for FCV countries, I think, especially for colleagues that cannot access those cities. We were lucky enough to go there, but please note that Berberati is not accessible by road because of security reasons and the armed groups along the road, and you are very dependent on the United Nations flights that can bring you there. But when you can go there, at least the scan is giving you some level of information and can already point you towards specific investments. So the other thing also that I want to emphasize is that we did manage to go to Berberati. We confirmed that there was indeed an issue of like water that was draining down from the top of the city down through the main arteries and creating erosion down the road. So it's not the only reason why there are those erosion, but it's highly contributed. So in that sense, NBS will be extremely powerful and will have like a really great impact. So when we were there, we collected local data. We had mentioned that the scan uses the global one, but for those who can actually visit, it's great to collect data. And the one thing I'd like to encourage also is to try to have a more continuous relationship and communication with the GPNBS. Not only like reach out for scan or specific analysis, but go back and forth. And when you have new data, new information, a new perspective, to go back to the team because they can help again, and they are really supportive in bringing you forward. So next slide. So for instance, in Berberati, the one thing that we could not really understand through the scan, but we see on site, is the extent of the problem. The erosion over there, and I really want to focus on the word erosion and not landslide because it's literally sinkhole, are threatening the entire city. We found about 9 gully erosion that are slashing across the city. They are threatening the major critical infrastructure, national road, access to the airport, to the hospital, to the cemetery. And of course, they are also like going through the neighborhoods and directly affecting housing and local population. So the one thing that we're doing now has been to go back to the GPNBS, try to think a little bit about the solution. We won't have too much time to go deeply into the solution today, but the one thing I want to mention is that even this type of issue and thinking back about this city center cluster, NBS can play a very powerful role if you act both upstream and downstream of the issue. So in the city center, which the scan has already identified, that would allow to reduce the flow of water. And then you can also find solution like within the gully itself with like slope stabilization. And then in the city, the more like traditional like categories that we see. Next, maybe the two things I want to emphasize for concluding on how this helps us is on the solution is that the importance of urban agriculture and also working with the agricultural colleagues. We work in LDCs, FCV countries, especially in secondary cities. There are actually a lot of those practices within the city. This is mainly due to the migration and rural areas that have brought this practice within the city. And the one thing that we are finding out in our studies is that when agriculture follows bad practices, it's a huge contributor to the start of erosion. So So we are placing that really on the top of the list of NBS now in these cities, and it should have like a great impact. The second thing I'd like to just like mention, at least with those two images, is that we can also really design with nature. And Nils was talking about it at some point, like it gets complicated sometimes to use concrete, to use stone and mortar. You don't even have the material, you don't even have the machine. You have to do with whatever is available locally. So those type of solutions, for instance, they do the exact same thing. The crane board, retaining wall, but it's just using pieces of wood and then growing the plants to stabilize the slope. The other one was just like, I don't know what in English, but do this fence to slow down the speed of the water and reduce the potential impact on erosion. Can also be done with living material. So that's very important, and I think like we need to try to find more solutions. So just to conclude, and this is back to my suggestion to really go back and forth with the GPNBS, that they have been supporting us all along the project cycle so far. So I mentioned that they helped us at the stage of the concept note, but then we were arranging also some TF, helped us with the grant submission. Now they're helping us with the report. They also supported us when we were preparing the NBS study. So with the writing of the term of references, advertising of the expression of interest, evaluation of the request for proposal. Now some of their members are also directly supervising vendors that are doing this study and doing the quality review of deliverable. Because we have also several TF, they are trying to help us to like coordinate all of this. So that also really they are participating in field mission. Of course, it was mentioned before the technical assistance that's been done both in person and virtually, and mentioning the bad preparation because this is where we are right now in our project. They are also like providing support, review, and integrate NBS in that, and with this specific focus on gender, social inclusion in NBS. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Wonderful. All right, so we still have a few people, actually like 50 people connected online, it looks like, and around another 30 in the room. Just quickly, if anyone has a question for any of the presenters, we still have the presenters around. I'm sure they would be happy to answer anything. Of course, those of you in Washington, you can ask afterwards when you grab a piece of fruit or something outside. But those of you online, you don't have that opportunity. So I wanted to ask anyone online who had a question you want to address to any of the presenters. I'm not sure if I should see anyone scan.
Niels, I have a question. This is
Perfect.
Paolo Cardinale from the RSA for SAR. This is super interesting. I mean, it's wonderful to hear what you guys are doing. I was just wondering how much interaction or connection is there between all this work vis-a-vis the ESF and the compliance aspect on issues such as ESS4, ESS2, I mean, even ESS1, but ESS6, right? How much are we capitalizing on the ESF to include within the project design these nature-based solutions, right? So it's not like an add-on or a positive, interventions, but also, we have the resources from the project level as part of compliance. Just wondering how those two narratives are meeting each other. Thanks.
Excellent question, Paolo. I will get to that in a second. I'm looking at Ruth here because she's the one representing ENB, so maybe she has the key answer. But we'll get back to that. There wasn't a hand raised. I saw quickly, but I can't see now on the screen. Whoever raised a hand, please ask your question.
Thank you. It's Elizabeth Rupert-Bulmer calling, connecting from the jobs group. Super interesting, so thank you so much. A lot of the speakers talked about the cost-benefit analysis, and on the costing side, that's a little more straightforward to me, but on the benefit side, it would be helpful to hear a little bit more what the NBS approach is on that and how the teams are thinking about it, and specifically from the perspective of the impact on jobs and livelihoods, and that would include both the direct and the indirect impacts. And this is an area that obviously is central to our mandate, and we would welcome working also with project teams on this. So great to hear what the approach is, and then also just making an offer to further collaborate.
Thanks a lot, Elizabeth. I'll ask Boris to address your question in a second. I don't know if Valerie is still connected, because you're probably in a position to maybe address Pablo's question. But first, I would say from the program's perspective, which is organized, which is managed by me administratively, we haven't done much to think about that, I think, is the reality. We're coming at it as a service offer rather than from an institutional requirement point of view. That, of course, doesn't mean that there couldn't be positive spillovers into the side of the equation you're asking about. But we haven't intentionally aimed at that. I think that's fair to say. Valerie, if you're still connected, do you want to address that question from Pablo? If Valerie is not, do you want to give it a shot, Ruth?
Sure. Well, first of all, I mean, the risk management is a responsibility of the environment and social teams, and that's a compliance issue. It's a policy issue that every country project that wants to borrow from the bank has to comply. So that's a whole set of responsibilities and assessment that is required. What we're doing in the program is providing guidance on including nature as part of the investment program, as part of the additional scope of, instead of a great infrastructure, including a nature to increase greening, reduce heat, and so many other benefits that, of course, can benefit also biodiversity, for instance, and will generate benefits and along to the compliance requirement for a project with the standard 6. It's not that we are trying to overstep on the responsibilities and requirements of ESF. There is a whole team doing that, but we are working on the design and guiding how to incorporate nature-based solution in a traditional sectors, right? Like water or urban, that will instead go through a process of a great infrastructure. We will welcome the interest. We have invited the environmental specialists in many of the trainings and activities we have been organizing. It's an opportunity. We are preparing a guidance together with NBS team and the global team for including biodiversity in NBS more strongly. But we need to, it's a fine line. What is the requirement and what is the additional benefit that could bring implementing nature-based solutions in a project? I do see a lot of opportunities, but we need to be clear what is the ESF team may require and what is the additionality that the nature-based solution will bring to a traditional great project.
Thanks.
Miles, can I chime in just for a sec, please? Yeah, no, I think this is, overall, and maybe Miles, I can try to coordinate a meeting between your team and the RSAs, because there is a lot of complementarity that we seem to be missing, right? So it's, I fully understand that this is not a compliance issue, but what is very clear to me is that nature-based solutions can be used to foster compliance, right? In ESS 6, we do often many, biological corridors. In many of the roads that we finance, obviously, right? You protect the asset by preventing erosion. And then you reduce cost in maintenance if you have actually nature-based solutions instead of the typical hardwire, infrastructure. So this is what I was trying to get at, right? I'm fairly new to the bank. Miles, we've met in a different lives, you may recall, but I'm new to the bank. And I do think that there is we always we often work in silos, and the possibility of capitalizing on all the knowledge that you have and all the knowledge you are creating and you have available into actually bringing it into effective project design, including some of the ESCPs and the requirements that we are asking from the lenders. It's a win-win, right? I mean, we are providing nature-based solutions and furthering your agenda, which is our agenda, and also supporting the risk management ESF, component, which is also our agenda and your agenda, right? So, I mean, I think maybe we can start. Maybe other RSAs are aware of this. I wasn't. So I'm glad I joined this conversation, and perhaps we can continue the conversation elsewhere, Niels.
Absolutely. Happy to, Paulo, and with the team. And in a sense, it has, from our perspective, I think it's a little bit similar to the climate co-benefits that I think it was mentioned and brought up, that to the task team, some of this work also help and contributes to drive climate co-benefits. So to the extent that there's, from our perspective, a positive externality of the work we're trying to do anyway, that accrues to the task teams and ensures our institution does this work in a better way, we absolutely actually have an interest in understanding it, because to us it becomes part of our value proposition. Maybe it also helps you to some extent with parts of your safeguards requirements. So
if I can close that one.
Yep.
I think it's a great comment. So when I was co-TTL, one of the big projects in Mozambique, we tried to do NBS. We had these conversations with the safeguard team. So the safeguard team was actually, I was a bit ashamed because I was designing NBS into my project, but then the safeguard team said, oh, but actually there are more NBS opportunities maybe, and the safeguard specialist there was quite familiar with NBS and some of the species choices, some of the risks and these kind of things. So I think having more awareness on both sides and having a conversation, not just about compliance, but about maximizing the value of these interventions at project design between ESF staff and operational staff, I think is very, very valuable. So if we can help with that, I'm happy to see where we can provide more information.
Boris, do you want to address the other question about the benefits?
I'm just doing this. Maybe one quick comment actually on the safeguards is actually there is one project now where we're working with safeguard specialists in the Mindanao project on transport, where actually the safeguard team approached us to help them with the TA on NBS. So I guess there is some ad hoc cross-pollination already. So to the question on cost benefits, I think not because I wrote it with the team, but just to say that I think this is sort of, this knowledge product, this cost benefit guidance is sort of the most comprehensive piece that we have on our approach. So there are hard copies there, but for the people online, it's also, everything is found on naturebasedsolutions.org, our external facing website. Happy to discuss that in more detail, but indeed, so the cost benefit part is critical, and we see it in many different phases in the project cycle, right? So in the scans, we try to do some first level cost benefit analysis, but of course, later on in feasibility studies, they're of course much more detailed, and these steps, they're all included in this work, but I'm happy to take to have a meeting later on to talk more details.
We can get a chat, right?
Yeah, of course. I'll put a link in the chat.
Abdullah Sharif, I see raised hand.
Thank you. Thank you for the nice presentations from the presenters. My question is that what is the difference between NBS and EcoDRR, ecosystem-based DRR? Thank you.
But the pity that Valerie left, because I was going to pass her to I don't know. Do you want to give that a go?
Not necessarily. We did, because I had this discussion before. Sorry, I fully agree. There's so many definitions. We have yet another report. We put the link in the chat where we reviewed all the different definitions. And the EcoDRR is very focused on the DRM side of things and how to use nature-based solutions basically for DRM specifically. And nature-based solutions as a term is broader than that, can also focus on water purposes and other types of resilience and non-resilience benefits of using natural approaches. And I agree with Valerie that we might want to be more clear. EcoDRR is a pretty good term. what we're doing, but we are kind of like sharing with the wider international community to now all use nature-based solutions. But we'll put also that link in the chat, and Boris, you want to comment on it?
Yeah, maybe one addition. I think a very important thing is what we're trying to say is that these are integrated solutions, right? So that they bring multiple benefits at the same time. And of course, the resilience and disaster reduction is an important entry point or an important objective often for our clients. But it's really, from our experience, we learned that it's also very important to bring out these other benefits that might be, resonate more with other sectors, but that are still a very important part of the value proposition. I think that's also an important distinction with the GFDRR.
All right, I think we're going to move towards closing. So I want to invite Eileen Berg, who's the lead water resource management specialist from the water practice, who co-leads the NBS program. Eileen led a flagship. No, the water practice co-leads the program. Eileen led the flagship report on what the future has in store, a new paradigm for water storage, which also focuses a lot on nature-based solutions. And Eileen also leads the bank's global solution group for water resource management.
Thank you. And thanks everybody for having me today. I realize that I'm the only thing that stands for you in official lunchtime, so I'll try to make this quick. But I just want to say how thankful I am for this group. Not only because of the services that it provides to teams that have enabled the bank to really move the needle on nature-based solutions that we've heard a lot about today, but also because it provides us the chance to reflect amongst environment and the disaster risk management groups, as well as the water GP. And we face a lot of the same problems. I think we heard some of them from Valerie today, sort of the traditional engineering approaches versus the natural solutions. I think we've all arrived in country and had 40-year-old master plans put down before us that don't have any natural solutions included in them. And I think our goal as we go through this is to try to move to a new development paradigm where the traditional engineering-based master plan approach is no longer, right? That we're truly looking at this from a system scale, looking at integrating the green and gray to meet these various needs across the sectors, right? And I think the curriculum that was brought up today was really exciting because it provides some of that storyline, some that can be used to go to ministers of finance to say, look, this is not a one-off solution. This is a serious, compelling development solution. But I think we also see that there's a long way to go in terms of data availability and having the level of information you need to be able to implement the nature-based solutions or even design them on the ground without long piloting programs. So we have to be very honest up front and I think help governments build time. I mean, Catalina was giving the example of Argentina, where the dialogue was, I think, 27 years to get to the point where we were doing nature-based solutions. So that brings me to something, this sort of systems approach and the systems change that Valerie was talking about. And I thought it was interesting that she was, and this is where our three-way exchange is so important. She's looking for examples where it's not conservation under a different name, that there are actually adaptation solutions. Where from the water practice, we're approaching the nature-based solutions from that conservation and adaptation solution, often not having the data needed to do that, but would love to have the ecological benefits on top, would love to have those additional benefits that we're able to prove. But I think getting to that point is often hard. And this is where I think Valerie's right. We're at a point where we're looking at a new paradigm for development. I think back to some of the low plateau peer-reviewed articles that have come out that are so amazing, looking at the conservation efforts and small subcatchments. You look downstream at their dry season water flows and they have vastly different results, right? In some areas, the dry season water flow is increasing based on the type of plants that they have. And in some cases, the dry season water flows are much worse after the watershed management interventions. So it's a question of what solutions we're trying to solve, what we're tracking in these solutions, and looking at it from a more system scale perspective. Valerie alluded to these global challenge programs that the bank is coming up with now. There's one on for forestry and the environment. There's one for water that includes climate resilience and nature-based solutions, reduction of flood and drought. And I think it gives us a really good platform to be able to take, enter the conversation and help steer the conversation in terms of what we want some of these global indicators to be. What are we building towards with these nature-based solutions and these nature-based approaches to development at a more holistic scale? I don't know if all of you are aware, there's an effort going on right now with TNC and WWF and IUCN and others to try to better define the indicators for freshwater health. As countries go to implement the Montreal Protocol, what is a better indicator rather than just kilometers of river restored, right? That really gets into the ecosystem and biodiversity. And wouldn't it be great if we could have those indicators that we could also use for our NBS projects to also buy into? I really see that this is a chance to look and see how the NBS solutions at the more local scales fit into the larger. So I hope you all leave this event as excited as I am about the sort of precipice we're on and what this community has to offer this bigger debate going forward. Oh, I also wanted to selfishly mention too, we are bringing in TNC to do a 3-day really intensive training for task teams. And this is going to be probably in February. And at the end of this, task teams will come out with the TOR. They can develop this with clients. Clients can be in these trainings with us for an NBS solution, for a feasibility study for an NBS solution. But it's really a hands-on effort or opportunity for you and your clients. So if anyone's interested in that, please come talk to me. There'll be an application process for teams moving forward. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much, everyone. I wanted to flag one more thing. You might have on some of the slides that obviously the doing work beyond what you absolutely have to do in operations costs money. That money in this institution always comes from trust funds. I mentioned the trust fund that I managed early on, but there's many more trust funds that funds nature-based solutions from depending on your perspective. No, that you might have seen on some of the slides mentioned of ProBlue. Surprisingly focus on oceans. Pro Green, the GWSP, you saw a reference to Gap Fund, you certainly saw a reference or heard about the GEF. So there's quite a lot of funding sources. Our teams collectively certainly know about all of them. So if you're struggling understanding universal trust funds for nature-based solutions, also on that question, there's a good chance you can get help from somehow, get some guidance and pointers, and maybe even direct help. Laurent was talking about in his case. So with that, thanks a lot for everyone who logged on. Please do contact the teams that are working on this if you want further support. Our business is helping you do yours in a slightly better and hopefully greener way. So thanks a lot for all of you here in the room. If there's any food left, please eat it. Otherwise, back to your busy day. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.